Between lockdown measures and closed international borders, the travel industry has been the worst hit sector. Planes are grounded, bars and restaurants closed. And even where some travel is possible, people are being advised to stay at home. Well, that could spell the end for businesses across the bloc, or maybe even a permanent change to how we travel. Hermione G has more.
Summer is when many European nations boost their economies thanks to tourism. But COVID-19 may thwart this year's income in countries like Italy, which is preparing to open its borders. The Prime Minister has urged Italians to travel domestically this year, while businesses are trying to adapt to the new normal.
Since last Monday, we've prepared our bar to enforce the rules on social distancing and allow our customers to enjoy aperitivo in total safety. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a big buffet available to our customers. But now, each aperitivo dish is prepared individually. This allows us to guarantee and comply with all safety measures.
Già strutturato all'interno del forno e portato direttamente al tavolo senza nessuna contaminazione.
In the race to attract tourists, Slovenia has some advantage. It was the first to declare the end of the pandemic nationwide. It's also one of the first to have reopened its borders, at least to most EU nationals. In the meantime, the government is working to prop up local business. While there could be light at the end of the tunnel for the tourism industry, this feels far away to many who work in the sector. Cultural venues remain mostly closed. Artists are afraid for their future. In countries like Portugal, they protest and demand the government helps them in these dire times. Still, other industries remain untouched by the pandemic. In Finland, while the whole economy halted, the prospects of the forest industry are positive. It has survived the pandemic so far, and overseas exports are still going strong, despite the virus. Hermione G, Euronews.
In the most visited country, the threat of the loss of tourism and the income from it is serious. France's capital welcomes 30 million people every year. But the famous bars and cafes are still closed in Paris. It's designated as a red zone by the French government. Well, Cyril Foneris is in Paris for us and joins us now. Cyril, morning to you. How much of an impact has the pandemic already had on tourism in and out of France? And is there any indication from the government about how and when the rules might change?
Good morning, Rosie. Well, the first numbers show a 40% loss of activity, but of course there'll be more studies to confirm that. Keep in mind that the tourism industry here in France represents more than 7% of the GDP. It employs 2 million people. So it's a very central subject, knowing that everything has stopped in March. Ski resorts in the Alps, wine tasting in Burgundy, monuments like the Eiffel Tower behind me, everything is closed, has been closed for the past 2 months. Now, the good news is that hotels are reopening, beaches are reopening, cafes and restaurants might reopen in June, at least in green zones. We'll know more about it next week. Now, the question is whether or not people will want to come to France to go to the museum or the restaurant or hotels. And one of the answers, of course, will be the virus circulations. Until now, France has not witnessed a second wave. Another key parameter will be the opening of the borders inside and outside the EU. France being one of the world's most hit countries, we imagine that tourists from other continents, Asia or America, might choose to go somewhere else. So the French industry is relying more on French tourists. The French will be able to go on holiday in France this summer, in July and August. That's what the Prime Minister said. And this is quite a good news for the industry. Normally around a quarter of French, 25% of the French go on holiday abroad. They will go to France, so that's a good news. We're heading towards a more old-fashioned tourism, more local this summer, obviously. In some remote regions around big cities like Drôme or Ardèche, some hotels are saying that the bookings have doubled compared to last year. But this phenomenon obviously won't be enough to save the French tourism industry, and the government announced a 18 billion euros plan to rescue the French industry. It has called it a Marshall Plan, so a very wartime vocabulary or post-wartime vocabulary from the French authorities here.
Cyril, thank you very much, speaking to us in Paris.